Hello and welcome to Premier Injuries. Today we are talking about your FPL assets. We've got a bit of a role reversal here at the moment, kind of combating the European Super League. Ben is giving the little man a chance to be competing at the big time here, talking about Premier League assets. I mean, we're just in good spirits about that situation. But yes, today we're talking about defensive assets, but we're always talking about great stuff here on the Premier Injuries channel. So make sure to like, share and subscribe to the channel because we've got lots of great content, some fantastic analysis from Dr. Raj, the video that we released yesterday. We also do the Monday Data show where we look at some really exclusive data that only comes from Premier Injuries and some other good content as well. And as I teased the other day, I'll keep teasing because we've got some great content lined up in the summer as well. So there's so much that you need to stay involved with. But before we get into the discussions, I always pass to you, Ben, just to ask, how are you doing? And are you looking forward to game week 33?
Always looking forward to the game week. It's been a mad, what is it now, 48 to 72 hours with the Super League. I think you give me the heads up first of all on Sunday, and when you mentioned Super League, I was like, I'm not really that interested in rugby. Hold on a minute, this is wow, what is happening here? And I always had my reservations. I had concerns whether it would actually be pushed through. I thought it was more maybe from FIFA and UEFA sanctions that would, stop the whole project in its tracks. Not realizing maybe that all fans, supporters, media, broadcasters would all sort of unite and come together to just, to shoot this down and to show that supporters, that there's been a lot of talk in recent times that, the game's moved on and, the supporters play less of a part and they're not as integral as they once were. Well, this, if anything's to come out of it, it shows that they still very much have a voice. They can still impact and change. It was great to see. It's refreshing. I'm not sure if they've won the war, but certainly, we've won the battle at this stage. We live to fight another day. So a really good couple of days we've had.
Yeah, honestly, Ben, we've been talking off air and everything, and I was quite dejected the other day when we were talking about the European Super League. We were planning our content and stuff, and I just felt lethargic a little bit. I was just thinking, God, this is almost the beginning of the end of football as we know it. And as you've explained there, though, fantastic news that the war is not over, but the battles have been won, and hopefully it might bring a little bit of a change as well, bringing back power to supporters. But we want to give power to you with your decisions in FPL. And one of the first things that we do have to say is remember to sort out your teams this week because there are 2 games missing, postponed because of the EFL Cup final, the Carabao Cup. So 16 teams play instead of the usual 20. Man City, Tottenham, Southampton and Fulham are the teams without games that do miss out. So if you got any of them, then you need to kind of jiggle your team around, and this is why you need a good, strong bench. And so just continuing this discussion of the blank week, sell or bench. Now, I think with the discussions that we've had over the last few weeks with the sell or bench thing, it's kind of, you have to manage your squad quite carefully. You don't want to sell assets that you want to bring back. But there is the genuine question here. Man City, you and I, Ben, have not been hot on their assets just because of the rotation risk, and Pep has kind of kept that up, kept us on our toes. Tottenham, I would say, are not looking so hot, and so maybe you can sell some of them. And then with Southampton, Fulham, not many people own them at the moment. So I think realistically, the big discussion is on Heung-Min Son. Do you sell him? Do you bench him? Harry Kane with his injury. But we will bring that to the forward discussions tomorrow. The one that I'll put to you, because you are an owner of him, is it Reguilon? Are you going to sell him? Are you going to bench him? Are you going to keep him until the end of the season?
It's a difficult one. I'll never commit Obviously, I had eyes on Reguilon, and I only pulled me wild card. I think it was 2 weeks ago now. So when I look at players and I'm bringing them in, I'm looking at a 4 to 6 week period first and foremost. We have seen Jose Mourinho depart in recent times. That might have went under a lot of people's radars. So we see Ryan Mason taking charge of Tottenham, the new interim boss to the end of the season, in charge of their first game, which will be kicking off in around about 35 minutes. We're recording here on a Wednesday evening. So we'll see what happens. But, this is a discussion that I had earlier today. It was just, it was a matter of time before Mourinho was to leave that role. And truth be known, if it wasn't Jose Mourinho, I think any other manager would have been pushed out the door quite a while ago. He lost the dressing room. So his departure and bringing somebody like Ryan Mason in, who's been associated with the club since he was 8 years of age, can only help that dressing room. There's a lot of players who are on the peripherals of that squad, on the fringes of the first team. They were maybe out of favour with Jose. They had fell out with Jose, and they may feel like they've got a point to prove. And, that confidence, maybe that renewed vigour, that optimism, the opportunity to impress a new boss, whether it's Ryan Mason or whether it's, on a new boss who's coming in on the summer, who potentially could approach, that's going to lift everybody. And to me, that makes Reguilon, that gives him more appeal, and I'm more likely to stick with the likes of Reguilon because of, Jose is gone. And also, we might see a slight change, a formational tweak, there might be, and tactics as well. So instead of maybe this, this sitting back and hoping to maybe catch teams on the counter and or grab a goal and sit back and shut up shop, as it were, Ryan Mason might have Tottenham being a little bit more expansive. We've seen Gareth Bale, come into the side tonight. He's had 3 changes there. So, maybe that's a sign of things to come. And I'll certainly be watching very closely. But at the minute, Reguilon is going to be part of that team. And I certainly don't have any plans to ship him out just yet.
Yeah, see, this is the interesting thing with Tottenham. I wasn't too hot on them before. And the problem is almost that because we're so late into the season, that the time for observation is not now. I usually give it like 2 or 3 game weeks before I pounce on a new asset, because I just want to see how they're doing. And especially with like a new managerial situation, how the team going to play, is there kind of a template forming? Tottenham have the EFL Cup final, they do have the league games, but they don't have anything else for me to kind of have an insight and go, right, they're going to play this way or they're not going to play this way. So if I'm talking about if you've got a Tottenham asset, I probably agree with you, keep them, because there's almost the opportunity to ride the wave of positivity with the new manager bounce. So we see that in so many clubs. They score more, they do better when a new manager is initially brought in. But I'm not sure if I can bring myself to actually buy the assets, because I feel like there's so many other assets in FPL that are more appealing. And somebody like Reguilon, for me, I'm not sure if he's going to get involved with the goals like a TAA or a Robertson or somebody like that. So that's just my reluctance there. But it's an interesting situation, and I look forward to seeing how it unfolds. As an Arsenal fan, hopefully negatively, but in terms of FPL, it will be an interesting one. We do have to move it on to another London-based team, a team that has caused a lot of blues. It's Chelsea this week. Tuchel, I mean, goodness me, he's taken rotation to another level. He's now rotating goalkeepers. Mendy is possibly not safe between the sticks. Somehow, Kepa has been brought back in as the goalkeeper, which is almost inexplicable to me due to the amount of errors that man had. But maybe Tuchel's worked on him in training or something, or maybe Chelsea have said to him, he's our record signing, you have to play him a little bit more often. So with that situation there, Ben, I'm a Mendy owner and I'm seriously considering a goalkeeping transfer just because I need the goalkeeper to play each week. That's like a bare minimum, let alone clean sheets. I can't be having a 0 thank goodness that this game week I did have Areola to get me 2 appearance points, but this can't carry on through the season, can it, Ben? So what is your kind of thinking behind that situation?
Yeah, it's something I looked at today. So last 5 game weeks. So that's game week to game weeks across the Premier League. Tuchel, the new Pep, the new kid in town, 25 changes. So that's 5 changes on average per game week. And trying to second guess exactly who's going to start. I mean, we've talked about players in that back line who we think had come in, and we thought maybe Aspilicueta was the solid choice. He was dropped against Brighton. This Kepa scenario with Mendy seems to have come out of the blue. Tuchel's saying all of the right words in the fact that, he can't believe how much of an impact Kepa's having on the team, his commitment to the squad, even when he's been on the bylines, how hard he's training. And it could be that, we see Tuchel flip-flop between the two, between now and the end of the season. I mean, even if he doesn't, the fact that Kepa is there in the background and could potentially come in means that Mendy is a leave for me. I would be looking to ship out whenever possible because, like I say, he's not cheap. There are other options elsewhere who are nailed down for a starting berth, and with Kepa and Mendy, Chelsea this weekend, they go into the game. They have Real Madrid, follow up in the Champions League just after that. What's Tuchel thinking? Who's his number one? Will you have to assume that Mendy is his number one and he likes Kepa? So does he ensure that he keeps Mendy for the Champions League because, he wants him fit for that one and therefore he starts Kepa again? Or does he start Mendy this weekend because he wants to keep him sharp and he wants to keep on his toes? There's just too many questions there for me. And yeah, if I would never take a hit, certainly not for a goalkeeper or a defender. But, when the opportunity presents, he would be gone from my squad, certainly.
We all thought we were being pretty slick by getting in old Mendy and kind of beating that Chelsea rotation, but then Tuchel took it up a notch. I think, Pep was the original board fraud, but Tuchel has taken that to another level that I didn't even think was possible. But this is the thing about football. It's about record breaking and having new kinds of levels, and that just seemed to be a new one. Let's move on to maybe a way to combat squad problems, have a more fleshed out bench, but without having too much money invested in it. Only Wolves and Brighton over the last 4 game weeks have kept more than 2 clean sheets. Wolves with 2, Brighton with 3. And there's been an incredible amount of goals in the Premier League. This is something that you and I kind of said with our own data explanations. Do check it out in terms of what happens to teams between game weeks 13, 38 and when teams have nothing to play for. These two teams seem to almost jump the trend of they're not conceding that many goals. They've shored up at the defence, and maybe there's not a huge chance of clean sheets, but they seem to be the most likely, or some of the most likely, in the Premier League. But what I like is the price of their assets, and especially with Wolves, quite a good run there as well. I still remain dubious about how much these teams will actually do, because throughout the season they posted good numbers and then underperformed. But I'm just putting it out there that their numbers, their data at the moment look good in the context of a Premier League where there aren't many teams looking solid at the back. I think Bolly coming back to Wolves is a huge addition there. They're playing their more traditional 5 at the back or 3 at the back, however people kind of classify it. But there's 5 defenders on the pitch and they're looking more solid there. They're kind of conservatively playing. It's at a cost to their attack, but that's fine because you're looking at defence. And then maybe somebody like Dunk would be good for Brighton because they've got the potential for clean sheets, but also good for set pieces. I mean, would you consider any of those assets, Ben, just because they're probably one of the only teams looking a little bit consistent at the back?
I mean, first of all, I have been looking at Wolves assets. And I do have a couple of Wolves players in this week's fan team draft, because I think, like we've alluded to many times, we may only be getting 2 or 3 teams who are able to get a clean sheet each game week. And Wolves this week against Burnley are one of those ones where I've sort of flagged to say, like, in my opinion, I think there's a fairly strong and decent chance with that. Now, yeah, last weekend, I think it was the Sheffield United, didn't play great, but looked solid, back to Nuno's more traditional setup. And we see at the expense of an attack and their offensive returns, but they haven't really had them all season anyway, or certainly not since the loss of Raul Jimenez. So I do like Wolves, and we spoke about in the past, if you want guaranteed minutes and you want, a good, just solid play, you go Cody. If you maybe want a slightly riskier option in terms of, whether he's always going to be fit or what have you, but gives you more of an attacking threat on set pieces, go Bowley. And those are the two that I would really be looking at. Cias is always one. I think he lives on last season's goals, really. And people seem to think he does bring a little bit extra to the game. And he's one that you could pop in there. For Brighton, am I sold on them? I've got a bit of a mental block on that Brighton team, or just generally. We talk about how pretty they look on the eye and how on paper they're a decent team, and they never seem to get the results. Well, yeah, you're not getting the results maybe because you're really just not that good. And performances have improved of late. They looked solid against Chelsea. They take a lot of heart and a lot of positive from that 0-0 draw. We've seen the return of Adam Webster and Dan Burn, 2 big players in that back line to complement Dunk. However, they have lost Ben White to suspension heading into game week 33. So that may require a little bit more tinkering from Graham Potter. Maybe Veltman swapping sides, but they've got that flexibility in there. If I was to plumb for any, it's going to be, I do like Veltman. He's somebody that has been on my radar. Lewis Dunk, a threat from set pieces. And then also I think maybe Dan Burn, because he tends to play in a more attacking role, or certainly advanced. If White's back, they could go with a back 3, and Burn would be maybe that sort of attacking wing back role. So potentially you've got some more attacking returns there from Dan Burn, and that's who I'd be looking at, really.
Just continuing on, maybe unfancied because of fixtures, or maybe just this last fixture this game week, is Stuart Dallas. A lot of people, we said keep him in your teams, stick with him, because Leeds are still looking good, and I think Bielsa and the way that he plays goes beyond the data that we looked at of teams. Leeds basically do have nothing to play for in many instances. They're safe. They've acquired what they need to for the season. Very slim chance of them making Europe. Maybe that is a driving force for them. But at the end of the day, they've done what they needed to do. But they're still putting out fantastic games. And I think, Dallas is fairly well owned, 24.8% of people, a lot of people in the top 10K. The Man United game, I think there could be a lot of goals involved, but I don't see Man United keeping a clean sheet here. Dallas is quite often involved. And on the flip side, Leeds are looking good. It could be a good game for them. I'm not sure there'll be a clean sheet. I think there'll be 1 or 2 goals scored against them. But Dallas, I fancy some involvement. But my warning is that from game week 34 onwards, there's a lot of cleanable games there. There's a lot of potentially high-scoring games as well. I think that at the moment, maybe it might be a bit early to get him in for the Man United game, although I still fancy him to do something. But it's that 34 to 38 period there. You've got a nice long time to capitalise on that period there. I mean, is he too highly owned for you, Ben? Or is that a differential dinnery kind of pick that you might bring in?
No, in terms of FPL, he's way beyond anywhere that I'd go in touch. So he couldn't come in. I have actually bought again. I'll go back to my fan team draft because it's a 1 week punt. I did actually bring Stuart Dallas in for that, and again, I'm not expecting a clean sheet, not by any stretch of the imagination. I can see that being a high scoring draw, maybe a 2-2 or a 3-3. It's a derby. It's going to be quite a feisty affair. I think chances will be created. I'm with you with the United. I'm never confident that they're going to keep a clean sheet. And in the form that Stuart Dallas has been in, you're getting a player who's playing in that, a little bit higher up the pitch. And, with clean sheets so hard to predict, if anybody offers, the threat of an attacking return, then I would say jump on it because, like I say, he's got a little bit of form, and you're going to really need to be. How can you maybe soften the blow of the goals that Leeds will concede, and that's maybe up the other end. And Stuart Dallas has had a good few chances recently, and he's tucked a few away. So in that respect, he's doing quite well for himself.
I think this is the point, people regularly who listen to us might think that we're repeating ourselves here, but we're really kind of behind this. Every game that I see now in the Premier League, apart from maybe a few with teams that are just not very good at going forward, I'm expecting no clean sheets. I think I said in a tweet that 2 or 3 each game week is probably the max we're going to see. And so far, that's what we've seen in these trends. It's so high goal scoring. It's very anomalous. It's much higher than usual, but we're kind of happy to say that it'll probably keep higher than usual. One, because of the game week 30 to 38 period data that we looked at, but also this season is going to be much more different because players are more tired than usual, less fit than usual. There's all these kind of things that point to it's going to be a bit of a different season. So this is the point when you look at Dallas or Trent Alexander-Arnold or maybe even Luke Shaw. These players, I'm not sure that they'll get clean sheets, but that doesn't matter now. We've got to a point in the season where we want attacking defenders who are going to get those involvements. But one team that I'm going to put to you, Ben, like looking at the data, I'm not sure because they haven't kept the data as well. They're another team that have underperformed, but I'm looking at Leicester. They have good underlying defensive data over the last 4, and they haven't kind of met that data in terms of output, but in terms of the observations that we made in terms of teams, what happens when they're in certain positions in the league game week 30 to 38 and when they have nothing to play for, Leicester are fitting into the mould of they're playing more conservatively because they are vying for European spots. This is something that we discussed in that kind of top 4 framework. They concede less. They try and they don't score as more as they kind of go through a more defensive period. But this is the problem, is that the Foxes are doing that, but the defence is not meeting up with the data. They haven't kept a clean sheet in that period. So they're not letting as many chances in as they used to. They're not letting as many shots in the box. And overall, they're probably one of the best defensives over the last 4 game weeks, but they're not doing it. So in terms of maybe a player that meets our requirements of potential for high goal scoring, maybe unlikely, but maybe clean sheets, I think Ricardo Pereira has to be in with a shout, because if you consider Leicester as maybe a team that might have the clean sheets, but they're a team that are going to be pushing, they might be scoring goals as well. He has the highest XGI of Leicester's defensive players. The side have some good games as well, so I think he has to be in with a shout in teams now, doesn't he, Ben?
If you look at Leicester's 2 next fixtures against teams, certainly Crystal Palace, that we flagged, for this running, look to oppose them at any given opportunity. We just don't fancy Palace. They've took the foot off the gas. They're going to be, the pressure's not there anymore. So they're home and host, job done. The proverbial flip-flops on the beach. And then you've got Southampton, who appear to be in free fall, playing some terrible football. And that's a little bit of a surprise. So those two games, should be there for the taking. And like you said, Leicester are pushing for that Champions League qualification spot. The only slight concern that I have with Ricardo Pereira, and this comes off the back of his performance at Wembley, where he wasn't great, but he also came off with a slight niggle in his calf. So that was a precautionary withdrawal, and he is available for the game on Thursday evening. But whether he'll actually play or not, I'm just not too certain. Brendan Rodgers said he's talked about managing his load. He said we'll expect him to have these little kind of niggles and problems, from now until the end of the season, until he gets a good, thorough pre-season block of training, in his legs. And by his own admission, again, he's not playing anywhere near the type of form that we're used to seeing from Ricardo Pereira, and that will take time to play himself back in. So yes, I like the pick, but Brendan Rodgers does have options there, and he can rotate that side, and he'd be very keen to protect Ricardo Pereira given his injury problems, and so that would be my only worry. So yes, by all means, have him in as your squad, but maybe again, you're always looking to have backup from the bench, because I don't think he's a nailed 100% starter.
The appeal for me as well is also his heat map. Since he's come back, he's right up the pitch. He's looking much more attacking. But maybe to contextualise there, Ben, would you prefer Timothy Castagna in your team instead? So he's fairly attacking, not as attacking as Pereira, but there is that solidity of he'll be starting week in, week out, because that, again, is another one of the things that we've said is essential for this run into the end of the season.
Yeah, Castagna is an option, and I would probably say he's the safer of the two. I did read a comment from Brendan Rodgers recently. I don't recall after what game, but he was talking about, I think it was Castagna came off for Mark Albrighton, I think it was at the time. And what he said was, in terms of that, attacking threat, Castagna just doesn't have that little bit of nous in that final third, and that's why he made the substitute, because he wanted Leicester to create something in there. So predominantly he's a defender who is playing in an attacking role, and that's fairly clear to see and understand. But look, I think just the way that Brendan Rodgers has been set up. So I think on Sunday he went with a back three, and then with one holding midfielder, and then had a block of four, and then Kelechi, Iheanacho, and Vardy. If you're seeing Pereira and Castagna in there, two defenders, and really quite high up the pitch, then there's a lot of appeal, and it ticks a lot of boxes. They've still got something to play for, so they're going to be playing 90 minutes. Till the end, till death, and they're going to be playing eyes out football. They're going to be given 100%, because they'll want a seat at the top table come the Champions League draw,
which they're allowed to take now. The Super League has meant that the demise of it means that if Leicester do qualify, then they don't have to worry about a nice little invitation coming through in the post. It sounded a bit like almost getting invited to tea and cakes at the Queen's, you've been cordially invited to the European Super League. So moving it on to another team, and the last discussion point from us today, another team that is vying for Europe. I do have fingers crossed for them, even though they are another London rival. We're talking about the Hammers here, but in terms of defensive performances, there's been a huge downturn there. Most goals conceded in the last 4 game weeks, third highest XG conceded over the same time as well. The interesting thing for me is where there is a worrying time at the back for the Hammers, it seems to be a boon up front. They seem to be almost playing, Kevin Keegan style. They're happy to just go out there, score lots of goals, and if they concede a few as well, hopefully they'll just score more than the opponent. The worrying thing for me is obviously their brilliance this season. The reason why they're a top 4 side or in the Champions League spaces is because that was predicated on a pretty good defence. They were a top 4 defence through the season, and that's kind of falling apart. And it just begs the question in my mind. They do have good attacking data, but but it's how long can they keep the defensive and attacking performances up, because it's so different to how they played through the season. Maybe Moyes is adjusting the tactics because of the injuries that they have with no Antonio and Declan Rice and all the problems that they have, and maybe Cresswell as well. So that could be the positive, that Moyes is adapting. But for me, it's just a bit of an alarm bell. It would be, Man City all of a sudden playing a low block because a few of their players are injured. It worries me that they're not sticking to the recipe that brought them success. So with their defensive assets, I'd say hop off them at the moment. But does that give you a worry for the whole team as well, Ben?
Not the whole team. I think further up the pitch, I'm still happy to own. Given the absence of some key personnel in that back line, and with Declan Rice as the shield, I think there's almost an acceptance that, well, with the best will and the intentions, we will concede, we will give up chances, and let's play to our strengths. Going forward, creating chances and scoring ourselves. And look, I think they'll fancy their chances against most teams. Follow the form, almost. Jess Lingard at the minute, he himself, he's fixture proof. I mean, he was pretty poor at St James's Park, if the truth be known, and he's a points magnet. He's done very little, then he gets his penalty. It reminds me of Bruno in a way. So higher up the pitch, I'm still, more than happy to go with him and maybe even Bowen to an extent. But that back line, not for me. Like I say, we've got Cresswell, you've got Masuaku, who's now out, you've got Dawson as well, who's suspended. You've got players who are just coming back from long-term injuries, who, then they're going to take time, and they're just not being able, they're not being able to afford that opportunity to get back to peak fitness. So there's going to be mistakes. There may be one or two more injuries to come along. And even just, chopping and changing from a 3 to a 4 different partners, you haven't got that solidity, that fluidity in there. And, just too much of a risk. I think we will see more of that, maybe gung-ho type of performance from West Ham, because, like I say, that's where their strength lies at the minute, just further up the pitch.
Yeah, I agree with you in that instance. I'm still happy to own Jesnando Lingandes because he's just absolutely playing fantastic. And Jarrod Bowen as well. We've kind of doubled up there. Did you bring him into your team, actually? I'm kind of jumping the gun there almost.
No, I'm just with Lingard at the moment. I moved off on Antonio when he suffered that setback, so I'm just on Lingard. I'm not sure if I'm confident enough to double up on FPL with West Ham. Maybe as one-off punts on, say, fan team around fixtures, then yes.
Well, I do have the double up for Bowen and Lingard. So, yeah, we will discuss the attacking assets, though, tomorrow. So, as always, make sure to stay subscribed to the Premier Injuries channel because we've got so much good content coming out at the moment. But just wrapping up here, I hope you found this information helpful. I hope that you find the analysis here good, and hopefully it does bring you guys a green arrow. But for now, a goodbye and a good luck from me, and I'll throw it over to Ben just to finish off.
Yeah, cheers, Jason. Another great podcast. Really enjoyed it. Food for thought. So looking forward to what stats and tidbits of information you throw from an attacking sense. Obviously, we've got the early deadline this week again, which is Friday, and that reduced fixture slate. I've just took one look at my team. And it's certainly back to the drawing board. So I might need your help over the coming days, my friend. But for now, thanks for watching. And if you have any comments, stick them in the box below. We'll be back very soon.